The air in the ship's training bay was thick with the scent of exertion, salt, adrenaline, and something uniquely human. Ethan wiped the sweat from his brow, breathing heavily after another grueling sparring session. Across from him, Zyra stood motionless, her vibrant indigo skin flushed a deeper shade of violet. Her feline-like ears twitched, and her piercing golden eyes were locked onto him with an intensity he had never seen before. Zyra? You okay?" Ethan asked, taking a cautious step back. Zyra's chest rose and fell in rapid breaths, her claws slightly extended, her long tail swaying erratically. She opened her mouth to speak, but hesitated, swallowing hard. "I did not anticipate this reaction," she finally murmured, her voice unusually breathy. Ethan frowned. "Reaction to what?" She took a slow step forward, her gaze flicking to the exposed skin of his arms. "Your scent," she admitted, her fingers twitching as though fighting an urge. "It is potent." Ethan blinked. Yeah, that's just sweat. You aliens don't sweat." Zyra exhaled sharply, her body shifting ever so slightly, her already toned figure subtly amplifying. Her hips widened, her chest pressed more insistently against her tight combat suit, and even her lips seemed fuller. Ethan noticed, and his brain struggled to process what the hell was happening. "Zyra, what's going on?" he asked, suddenly very aware of the predatory gleam in her eyes. She licked her lips, an unconscious motion that sent a shiver down his spine. "Humans are not supposed to trigger this," she admitted, her voice huskier now. "But your scent, it activates a primal response in my species. A mating response." Ethan's stomach dropped. "Wait, what?" Zyra's breathing grew heavier, her pupils dilating as she took another step forward. "It is inconvenient," she muttered, almost to herself. "But now that it has started, it cannot be ignored." Ethan backed up until he hit the training bay wall, his mind racing. This was bad. Really bad. Or maybe not? "Zyra, we should, figure this out before you." She was already closing the distance. And by the look in her eyes, talking wasn't going to be enough. Ethan swallowed hard, his back pressed against the cold metal wall of the training bay. Zyra was in front of him now, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her body. Her usually composed demeanor was gone, replaced with something far more intense, primal, even. "Zyra, let's just take a breath," Ethan said cautiously, raising his hands in what he hoped was a non-threatening gesture. Zyra tilted her head, her golden eyes locked onto him. "Breath? You do not understand. Human. My body has already begun adapting." She shifted her stance, and Ethan couldn't help but notice. Feel how her curve had become even more pronounced, her figure reshaping itself in real time. "Yeah, I noticed that," Ethan muttered under his breath, trying to keep his gaze at eye level. Zyra's tail flicked impatiently. "In my species, this response is automatic. When a compatible mate's pheromones are detected, our bodies prepare for reproduction." Ethan's heart pounded. "Okay, well, I am not sure I qualify as a compatible mate here." Zyra's nostrils flared as she took another step forward. "And yet, your scent triggered this reaction," she murmured, her voice low, almost vibrating. "Which means my biology disagrees with you." Ethan let out a nervous chuckle, running a hand through his damp hair. "All right, look, I get it. Biology is weird, but maybe there's a way to, turn this off." Zyra exhaled sharply, frustration flickering across her exotic features. "There is a way," she admitted, her tail curling, "but it requires resolution." Ethan didn't like the sound of that. Define resolution. Zyra's gaze darkened. Either the instinct is fulfilled, or the body resets itself after a prolonged period of discomfort, which can take days. Days. Of this. Ethan could barely handle the tension right now. The thought of enduring it for days made his brain short-circuit. Okay, he said, rubbing his temples. "There has to be a third option. A cold shower? Some alien meditation technique." Zyra's lips curled into a smirk. "You amuse me, human," she said, her voice a dangerous purr. That did not make Ethan feel better. And judging by the way Zyra's body continued to shift, they were running out of time to find a solution. Ethan took a slow, steady breath, tried to ignore the very obvious changes happening to Zyra's body. The problem was, she wasn't exactly making it easy. Her posture had shifted, hips swaying slightly, her chest rising and falling in quickened breaths, her usually sharp and tactical mind seemingly clouded by whatever biological storm was raging inside her. Zyra, Ethan started carefully, holding his hands up. I get that this is, instinctual for you, but you're a warrior, right? A highly trained fighter? You can control this. Zyra's ears flicked, and for a brief moment, her usual composure flickered through the haze in her golden eyes. I am in control, she said, though her voice betrayed her doubt. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Are you, though? Zyra's tail flicked behind her, agitated, and she exhaled sharply. I am trying, she admitted, but my body is working against me. My muscles are tightening. My skin is overly sensitive, and the scent. She cut herself off, her fingers clenching into fists. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. Right. So, option 3. How do we force your body to reset without fulfilling the instinct? Zyra hesitated, her gaze flickering as if she was internally warring with herself. Then she took a breath, forcing some of the tension from her shoulders. There are techniques. Pain can sometimes override the response. Extreme exhaustion may work as well. Ethan latched onto that. Exhaustion? Like physical exertion? Zyra nodded. Yes, but it must be intense. Battle. Prolonged combat. It could suppress the reaction until my body resets. Ethan felt a massive wave of relief. Fighting? He could work with that. Okay, good. Great. We can do that. We'll train. Hard. Work through it. Zyra gave him a sharp look, her lips twitching. You intend to spar with me? In this state? Ethan smirked despite himself. Hey, you said it needs to be exhausting. I think I can handle giving you a workout. Something dark flickered in Zyra's gaze at his choice of words, but before she could respond, Ethan moved to the center of the training bay and dropped into a ready stance. All right, he said, grinning despite the very real danger. Let's see who tires out first. Zyra's smirk returned, dangerous, predatory. Very well, human, she purred. But do not say I did not warn you. And then she attacked. Ethan barely had time to brace before Zyra launched herself at him. She was fast, faster than usual. Her reflexes were already incredible, but now, with whatever biological reaction was overwhelming her, she was moving like a damn blur. He ducked the first swipe. Her claws slicing through the air where his head had been moments before. His instinct screamed at him to go on the defensive, but he forced himself to stay calm. If exhaustion was a goal, he had to keep her moving. That all you got, he taunted, stepping back as she lashed out again. Zyra let out a sharp breath, eyes blazing. Do not mock me, human. She surged forward, and Ethan barely managed to block, his forearm catching her strike. The impact rattled through his bones. Damn, she's strong. He retaliated with a quick jab to her side, but she twisted away, her tail lashing out. Ethan ducked, rolling under the attack, and came up with a kick aimed at her midsection. Zyra caught his foot midair, a smirk tugging at her lips. Predictable, she murmured, then threw him. Ethan hit the ground hard, skidding across the metal floor. His breath left him in a grunt, but he rolled with it, getting back on his feet. All right, he muttered, shaking his arms out. Guess we're playing rough. Zyra's body still carried that unnatural glow of heat, her curves accentuated by the tightness of her combat suit. But her smirk was all challenge now, focused, dangerous. Is this enough exertion for you? He asked, wiping more sweat from his forehead. Zyra exhaled, her pupils flickering. Not yet, she admitted, but there was a slight tremble in her stance now. More. Ethan smirked. Fine, let's turn it up. He charged this time, faking left before twisting right. He managed to land a solid elbow strike to her ribs, making her grunt. But instead of stepping back, she grabbed his wrist, twisting him around and slammed him into the ground. Getting tired yet? She teased, pinning him down. Ethan groaned but smirked up at her. Not even close. Zyra's breath hitched, and for a split second, something deeper than instinct flickered in her gaze. But she shoved it down and yanked him back to his feet. Again, she demanded. Ethan just grinned. This was going to be one hell of a workout. Ethan's muscles burned, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he circled Zyra in the training bay. They had been at it for what felt like an eternity. Strike after strike, counter after counter. His body ached, his sweat dripping onto the floor, but he couldn't stop now. He wasn't sure if Zyra could stop. She was breathing heavily, too, her normally fluid movements slightly less precise, her reactions a fraction slower. The heat still radiated off her, her enhanced curves still drawing his eye when he wasn't careful, but there was something else now, control. "I think it's working," Ethan panted, shaking the sweat from his hair. Zyra exhaled sharply, swiping her forearm across her glistening brow. "Perhaps," she admitted, but her voice was still thick with lingering tension. "But not enough." Ethan grinned despite himself. "You just don't want to admit I'm keeping up with you." Zyra narrowed her golden eyes. "Do not test me, human." "Oh, I definitely am." With a growl of frustration, though maybe something else, Zyra lunged again. Ethan dodged, just barely, feeling the rush of air as her clawed hand passed inches from his shoulder. He pivoted, using her own momentum against her, locking his arm around hers and twisting her into a grapple. For the first time, she stumbled. Ethan pressed his advantage, shifting his weight to throw her off balance. He expected her to resist immediately, to break free and retaliate. But instead, Zyra tensed, froze, her breath hitching as his grip tightened. Ethan suddenly realized just how close they were. Zyra's back was pressed against his chest, her body radiating an almost electric warmth. He could feel the rise and fall of her breathing, could hear the low, guttural sound vibrating in her throat. His arms were locked around her waist, her hips pressing back against him in a way that made his brain short-circuit. Zyra swallowed hard. "Ethan!" His own breath hitched. "Yeah." A long, charged pause. Then Zyra shoved him back, hard enough that he stumbled. "This is sufficient exertion," she announced, though her voice was strained. Her tail flicked sharply. "We should stop." Ethan blinked, still catching his breath. "You sure?" She turned away, inhaling deeply as if regaining control. "Yes." But the way her fingers twitched and her tail curled suggested otherwise. Ethan watched as Zyra turn away, her body still visibly tense. The training bay was silent now, save for their heavy breathing. His own muscles ached, his limbs shaky from exhaustion, but his mind was still racing. Something had changed in the last exchange. The way she froze when he held her, the way her breath hitched, the way she pushed him away instead of breaking free immediately. She was fighting this. Hard. Ethan wiped his face, trying to gather his thoughts. "So that's it? We're done." Zyra's ears flicked, but she didn't face him. "Yes." Her voice was steady, but there was an edge to it, like she wasn't entirely convinced. Ethan exhaled, rolling his shoulders. "And the problem?" "Gone." She hesitated. It was barely a second, but he caught it. "I have it under control," she finally said. Ethan narrowed his eyes. "That's not what I asked." Zyra turned slowly, her golden gaze locking onto his. "It is manageable," she clarified. The exertion helped. "The instinct is subdued." Ethan studied her. She looked more composed, but something still felt off. Her tail, which was usually calm and precise, twitched erratically. Her hands were clenched at her sides, and there was a faint flush still lingering on her indigo skin. He sighed. "You're still fighting it, aren't you?" Zyra's jaw tightened. "I am trained to control my body." Ethan shook his head. "That's not what I asked, either." Her eyes flashed, irritation flickering across her face. "Why does it matter to you, human?" Ethan stepped closer, ignoring the way her muscles tensed. "Because I don't like seeing you suffer." That stopped her. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Ethan ran a hand through his damp hair, exhaling. "Look, I'm not saying we have to." He gestured vaguely between them. "Resolve this the usual way. But if there's something else that helps, something that doesn't involve you just gritting your teeth through it, then maybe we should figure that out." Zyra stared at him, unreadable. Then, slowly, she exhaled, some of the tension easing from her frame. There may be another way. Ethan raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. She hesitated again, then met his gaze. You must stay close. Ethan blinked. Stay close? Zyra's golden eyes flickered with something unreadable before she exhaled, as if forcing herself to stay composed. Yes, proximity affects the intensity of the response. Your scent triggered it, but paradoxically, remaining near you may help stabilize it. Ethan raised an eyebrow. So, you're saying the solution is for me to not leave? Zyra's tail curled slightly, betraying her unease. It is unconventional, but my species does not merely seek mating when this instinct arises. She hesitated, then sighed. There's another aspect, bonding. Ethan's stomach did a weird little flip. Bonding. Zyra nodded, stepping closer. Physical proximity. Touch. It allows the body to recalibrate, to recognize the source of the reaction as a stabilizing force rather than trigger. Ethan swallowed. And by touch, you mean? Zyra's eyes narrowed slightly, as if daring him to make some crude joke. Not that, human. She took another step forward, and Ethan felt the warmth radiating from her. It can be as simple as sustained contact. My body must recognize that you are not a threat, not an obstacle to be conquered. Ethan chuckled nervously. Well, that's good, because I'd rather not be conquered. Zyra gave him a look, but there was something softer in it now, something almost uncertain. So, Ethan continued, rubbing the back of his neck. What do you need me to do? Zyra hesitated again, as if even admitting this was a struggle. Then, before he could react, she reached out and gripped his wrist, pulling his hand toward her. Ethan froze as her fingers guided his palm against her lower abdomen, just above her combat belt. Her skin was hot, even through the thin fabric of her suit. He felt the steady rise and fall of her breathing, the way her body tensed, then slowly relaxed beneath his touch. Zyra inhaled sharply, closed her eyes for a brief moment. This, she murmured, steady, constant. Ethan tried to ignore the sudden thudding of his own heartbeat. Right, just standing here, holding on. Zyra opened her eyes, looking at him like she was studying every inch of his expression. Yes. Ethan licked his lips. Well, could be worse. Her lips twitched. You have no idea, human. And yet, for the first time since this started, she seemed calmer. Ethan stood there, his palm resting against Zyra's abdomen, feeling the slow, steady rhythm of her breathing. He wasn't sure how he'd ended up in this situation. Pressed up against an alien warrior who had nearly torn his head off minutes ago, now suddenly needing his presence to stabilize herself. It was oddly intimate, not in the way he had first feared, but in something deeper, something unspoken. Zyra's body remained tense at first, as if she was fighting the very thing she had just instructed him to do. But then, gradually, he felt the shift. Her muscles relaxed slightly. Her tail's erratic twitching slowed, and the heat radiating from her body no longer felt overwhelming. It felt controlled. She exhaled, long and measured, and Ethan finally let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Better? He asked, keeping his voice low. Zyra opened her eyes, and for the first time since this whole mess started, she looked like herself again. The haze was still there, faint and lingering, but her sharp focus had returned. Yes, she admitted. Her voice was softer now, lacking the strained edge from before. The response is fading. Ethan smirked. So, all that sparring, all that fighting, and what you really needed was a glorified hug. Zyra's eyes narrowed. Do not test me, human. He chuckled. Just saying. You could have saved us both some bruises if you'd figured this out earlier. She huffed but didn't pull away. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, her expression shifting to something more thoughtful. Perhaps, she conceded, but it is not easy to override instinct. My species values strength, control. To surrender to something beyond our will is difficult. Ethan frowned slightly at that. This wasn't surrender, he pointed out. You figured out a solution. You adapted. Zyra regarded him for a moment before nodding. Perhaps you are right. She glanced down at his hand, still resting on her stomach. You may remove this now. Ethan hesitated. then slowly pulled his hand away. Zyra inhaled deeply, as if testing herself. Then, finally, she nodded. It is done. The reaction has subsided. Ethan grinned. So what you're saying is, I win. Zyra rolled her eyes. You are insufferable. But the ghost of a smirk tugged at her lips. Ethan stretched his sore muscles, still feeling the lingering burn from their intense sparring session. Zyra, however, seemed completely at ease now. Whatever biological chaos had overtaken her was finally under control, and the tension that had defined the last few hours was fading. She stood with her arms crossed, studying him with her usual sharp gaze, though there was something different now, something less aggressive. So, Ethan said, rubbing his wrist, "We good." Zyra gave a slow nod. Yes, the response has been neutralized. She exhaled, rolling her shoulders. Your presence stabilized my body's reaction. Ethan smirked. So, I am useful after all. Zyra's tail flicked, but there was no irritation in her expression. Occasionally, he chuckled, wiping the sweat from his brow. Well, if this ever happens again, you know where to find me. Zyra arched an eyebrow. You assume I would allow it to happen again. Ethan shrugged. Biology's weird. Never know when some poor human's sweat will send you into a spiral. Zyra exhaled sharply, but he caught the way her lips twitched, like she was fighting a smirk. You jest. But this situation was unexpected. Ethan leaned against the training bay wall, watching her carefully. Yeah, no kidding. But you handled it. She looked at him then, eyes unreadable. We handled it, she corrected. That caught him off guard. It wasn't often Zyra acknowledged teamwork, at least not outside of combat. She was a warrior through and through, proud and independent. But something about this whole experience had shifted something between them. He nodded slowly. Yeah, we did. A comfortable silence settled between them, a stark contrast to the earlier tension. Ethan wasn't sure what to say now. Things had gotten close. And not just physically. There had been a moment when she froze in his arms, when her breath hitched, where something unspoken passed between them. But now, with the crisis over, Zyra had slipped back into her composed self. After a moment, she stepped forward, closing the distance between them again. Not aggressively, not with the predatory edge from before, but deliberately. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Round two. Zyra exhaled through her nose. No, I merely wished to test something. Before he could ask what, she reached out and pressed her palm against his chest, right over his heart. Her touch was firm, but not rough. She stood still, eyes focused, as if she was studying him in a way she hadn't before. Ethan swallowed. What exactly are we testing? Zyra didn't answer immediately. She seemed to be feeling something, measuring the way his heart beat beneath her hand, the warmth of his skin, the subtle rise and fall of his breath. Then, finally, she spoke. You did not recoil from me, she murmured. Ethan blinked. Why would I? She tilted her head slightly, her fingers still pressed against him. I am different from you. Ethan huffed a quiet laugh. Zyra, I think we're way past pointing out the obvious. She considered that, then removed her hand. Perhaps. Another pause, and then she glanced at him, her golden eyes flickering with something unspoken. You were a worthy partner in this challenge, Ethan. He grinned. High praise from you. Should I feel honored? Her lips twitched. Do not let it inflate your ego. Ethan pushed off the wall, stretching one last time. Well, if we're done here, I could really use a shower. Don't want to accidentally send another alien into a heat frenzy. Zyra exhaled sharply, but this time there was no frustration in it. Go, then, before your scent causes another incident. Ethan chuckled, giving her a mock salute. Until next time, Zyra. She watched him go, silent for a moment. Then, just before he stepped through the exit, she spoke. Ethan. He glanced back. Yeah. A brief pause. Then quietly she said, Thank you. Ethan's grin softened. Any time. And with that, he was gone. Zyra remained still for a moment longer, then exhaled, rolling her shoulders. Perhaps humans were more interesting than she had originally thought.